do you know your area of excellence? Do you? Everybody's got a gift, but a gift doesn't become a talent till you use it, till you work on it. So you look at all the people who are iconic in every area. You might say, Bill Gates is iconic. Steve Jobs is iconic. Oprah Winfrey. Oh my goodness. Jay-Z and Beyonce. Derek Jeter. They're iconic. Well, what the hell do I mean by iconic? Well, anybody can win one time. I mean, Beyonce, you can be number one on the Billboard charts. You can be number one. You can have the number one song in the world. Anybody, a blind squirrel can find a nut one time. But Michael Jordan, when you win a second national title, Derek Jeter, when you win the World Series again, that's when we call dominating. Dominating. And when you dominate, you're iconic. That's your area of excellence.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share with you a new platform that I am loving, and it's called Buy Me a Coffee. Essentially, it's a way for creators to accept support from their community through donations. So if you're loving the Black to Business podcast and us producing these amazing shows weekly, you can simply show us support by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Black to Business. Once you're on the website, you have the option to give a one-time donation or a recurring donation. And no matter how big or small, we appreciate you. And if you don't have it to give, we totally understand. I honestly wanted to share this because not only is it a way for you to support us through donations, but you can also show support without spending a dime by using that same link, buymeacoffee.com/Black to Business. And we're also going to list it right here in the show notes. But you can also use that same link to sign up for your own account, and it serves as a referral link for us. So maybe you will find it helpful for your business to offer it as a way for your community to support you. If you're able to donate to us and sign up for your own account, even better, because that sounds like a win-win to me. Now let's get into today's episode. Welcome back. So when people ask me about why I started Black to Business or how I started, and I tell people my story, one of the things I always talk about is that growing up, when it came to entrepreneurs and business owners, I didn't see many people that look like me. I grew up in the small southern town of Osceola, Georgia, and really the only people that I could think of that own a business were the salon owner, the barbershop owner, and probably the funeral home director, the owner. So that was the only people that I thought about when I seen business owners. And so for me at a young age, also, I knew that I wanted to be a boss. And I knew that because I used to read a lot, and I just knew at a young age, going through remnants of Jim Crow South and dealing with all of that, I was like, I need to own my own business. And I began to think about, if I do own a business, I want it to be something that I could give back to my community or do something for my community. And in that, I thought about something that will help me build wealth, because that is what allows you to make an impact on your community. So as an avid reader, naturally, when I started my business, I became interested in researching those people who were successful. And naturally, I was drawn to reading and research through books. And when I think about that process, so two of the books that I read during that time were Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. I know I read that one first. And then The Wealth Choice, Success Secrets of Black Millionaires. And both of these books really changed my perspective on, what I saw as success, because they entailed a wealth plan for Black America, but also a lot of these stories in these books were by Black millionaires. So that was really inspirational to me. So today's episode is a full circle moment, y'all, because I am getting the chance to speak to the author of these two books, and that is Dr. Dennis Kimbro. I was so hyped. I'm still so hyped that I get to share this with you all. It's a full circle moment for me. And just a little bit about Dr. Kimbro is he's a tireless educator. He's a New York Times best-selling author. Like I said, he wrote those 2 books, but he's written several other books. And he's a business school professor and universally characterized as an authority on leadership, wealth, and success. As one of today's top business speakers, he has documented and shared his principles and insights on peak performance with thousands of followers around the globe. And today we're diving into his expertise on Black America's Guide to Thinking and Growing Rich. During this conversation, even before we started this conversation, I told Dr. Kimbro I wanted him to take control and really share the nitty gritty of, based on his research and just the years he's put into doing the work in our community. So some of the things we're going to cover in this episode is the habits of Black self-made millionaires and the importance of mindset in building wealth and knowing the difference between a successful and unsuccessful person, and also the importance of maintaining your brand and so much more. This is such an amazing conversation. Like I said, it's been a pleasure to speak with Dr. Kimbro, and I'm excited to share this with you. So let's dive in. So I am so excited about today's episode because we have such a wonderful guest, Dr. Dennis Kimbro, on the show. I am starstruck because I read 2 of your books I have here, Think and Grow Rich and Black Choice, and then also The Wealth Choice, Success Secrets of Black Millionaires. Yes, really inspired Black to business. So welcome to the show, Dr. Kimbro.
Well, thank you very much, Monique. I am honored to be here. You could have selected anybody to be on your wonderful podcast, and you chose me. I am honored.
Yes. So we chatted a little bit before we started recording, but before we dive into today's conversation, which is about Black America's Guide to Thinking and Growing Rich, I want to talk about you for my listeners who are not familiar with you. If you could just share briefly, what is it that you do? How did you get where you are today? And kind of what is it that you do in your business?
Wow, great question. Yes, I know there are a lot of folks, I guess close to 1 million, because that's what they got in one of my books, who know me. But for those who don't, in 1984, my life changed forever. I didn't know it was about to change, but it certainly changed forever. When I got my degree from Northwestern University, which was in 1984, my area of interest was wealth and poverty among underdeveloped countries, underdeveloped nation states. And the first piece of advice, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was from my committee chair, who said, Dennis, let me give you an insight. Don't look at your dissertation as a requirement for your degree. Look at your dissertation as your first book. And I kept that in mind, and I was granted the degree. And after I was granted the doctorate, I turned to my lovely wife and I said, I know my first book, but I want to make a few changes. She said, what's your first book? I said, well, you know how I studied wealth and poverty? She said, yes. I said, I don't want to study poverty. I only want to study wealth. And you know how I studied underdeveloped nation states? She said, yes. I said, I don't want to study nation states. I want to study individuals, particularly African Americans. So Monique, right after that occurred, here I am just fooling around. There was no internet back then, and I'm just trying to get my hands on as much data as possible in terms of African Americans and wealth. And Miss Monique, I literally stumbled upon an old issue of Time magazine that focused on Martin Luther King when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, you know, he led that boycott in 1955, and in that article, Time magazine said there were only 5 Black millionaires in the United States. Well, those 5 Black millionaires made it to the top of my list of 50 individuals at the time who I was going to meet and interview, trying to collect data. And for your listeners out there who have no idea who those 5 were, number 1, John Johnson of Ebony magazine. Number 2, T.M. Alexander, who was an assurance agent who insured all the cars used in the Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. A.G. Gaston in Birmingham, Alabama. Had a great interview with him, drove over from Atlanta. Charles Clinton Spaulding, North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. He was the only individual of the 5 who wasn't living. But I did drive up to Raleigh-Durham, and I spent 2 days talking to his business partners, his associates, and family members, trying to get a flavor and scope of what this individual was like in his mindset. And last but not least, in Chicago, S.B. Fuller, who at the time was the dean of all Black entrepreneurs. He was the individual who trained John Johnson, George Johnson, and a host of Black business people. So they were at the top of the list. I would go any place, anytime, anywhere. I'd raise the money, get the money for the airline, hotel, and blah, blah, blah. But nothing was going to stop me. There was an obvious gap in the literature. And let me tell you how deep this chasm was and still is. In 1897, and I'm assuming you're African American. Yes. It might be a bad assumption, but 1897, your most prolific scholar, W.B. Du Bois, wrote the seminal book, The Negro in Business. 1897. That book was the centerpiece of the Atlanta Conference in 1897. They had a conference on Black businesses and Black economic development surrounding that book. Well, 1897, that was the first book on Black businesses published. The next book wasn't published until 13 years later by Booker T. Washington. In 1910, he wrote a book, and Monique, don't you know he used the same title? Okay. There were only 25,000 copies of that book printed. I'm in my study at home right now, and I have one of the 25,000. Wow. And then, so 1897 to 1910, and not another book geared or spearheaded for African Americans on business until Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice in 1991. So I knew there was an obvious gap in the literature. And 3 times I pulled out a legal sheet of paper and I wrote down at least 50 names on those sheets of paper that I interviewed. And I had so many interviews that I had enough interviews for 3 books. I didn't know that I was going to be able to write 3 books off the interviews. Of course, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. Then number 2, What Makes the Great Great? And number 3, The Wealth Choice, and never repeated a single interview. And I still have interviews with individuals that, are on the cutting room floor that I have yet to use.
See, that's amazing, because that's why I'm so excited about this conversation. You're taking us down history. I did not know that about the first book. So learned something new today. I really appreciate you for pouring that into me and my audience. So thank you for that. This is why these conversations are so necessary.
And a lot of folks don't know. And W. Du Bois, he was a professor at the school where I teach right now, Atlanta University. And after the spring semester, he got on a train and went as far north as Boston and as far south as northern Florida, got off at major cities along the way to interview Black business owners. And he took all that data. And when I saw the research tool that he used, I said, wow, man, he was ahead of his time. And he was like I said, a prolific scholar, because he wrote that book. And of course, he wrote Souls of Black Folk by interviewing sharecroppers in Albany, Georgia, and the like. So I'm a Johnny come lately, but that's a critical factor. Why? Because what thou seest, that thou beest. Yes. What are the words, pictures, and images going through the mind of the successful individual? Well, they think about dreams. They think about vision. They think about productivity. They think about yield. They think about doing something and going somewhere. What are the words, pictures, and images going through the mind of the unsuccessful person? Well, they think about lack, and they think about scarcity. They think about, woe is me, I can't do that. The only thing I wanted my readers to do is just, change the data, just flip the script, ascribe to a completely and different paradigm. Yeah. And Monique, what the hell is a paradigm? It is a set of inborn beliefs. And what we know about inborn beliefs, that's what you learned. It might take you a long time to change it, but it can be changed. It's not completely and totally innate. You can change it. Economics 101, microeconomics, it's all about choice. There are 50 million different choices that, as soon as we wake up in the morning, Monique, as soon as your lovely feet hit that cold ground, you could be bombarded with 50 million different choices. And the overwhelming majority, you don't have to ascribe to. You don't even have to choose. You don't even have to face. But there are two choices that you must face day in and day out. And what are they? You can accept the circumstances as they are, or you can take the responsibility to change them. And this is African Americans. This is what we need to know. Am I saying it's been easy for Black Americans? No.
Right.
Am I saying discrimination and racism and marginalization and white supremacy has taken a toll on us? Hell yes. But it was Booker T. Washington said the circumstances that surrounds a man's life are not important. It's how that individual responds. So I got some good news and I got some bad news. Here's the bad news. Nothing will change until you change, Monique. And I'm using you rhetorically now. Unless you change, nothing will change. I'm talking to my students today about being average and watching the masses and going another way and living in a capitalist society that rewards differentiation, that rewards your propensities and your proclivity to be unique. You are blessed to live in that type of country. So why in the world would you want to be average? All right, you want to drive the average car? And I ask my students, all these business majors, I said, what's the average car? Well, the average car is a 2019 Honda with more than 200,000 miles on it. So if you want to be average, there's your car. You want to eat the average lunch? Well, what the hell is the average lunch? The average lunch costs about anywhere between $6 and $8. And what is the average lunch? A quarter pounder of McDonald's with cheese, fries, and a medium Coke. The millions upon millions who eat that, who are average every day. You want to live in the average home? Well, what is the average home? It's 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a mortgage of $1,100. I don't want to live in 2,000 square feet. I want a little bit more than that. You want the average salary? Well, if you're college educated, the average salary is $57,000 a year for men. For you, Monique, it's $47,000. That piss you off? That you're earning $10,000 or less? Come on, ladies. If that's not enough to get you excited, there's nothing in my toolbox that can help you. Don't read my books. Don't listen to me on the podcast. If I'm in town speaking somewhere, don't listen. No need for you to leave your house. If that by itself, you're paying a $10,000 tax. If that doesn't compel you, impel you, motivate, inspire you, nothing else will. Now that's for a college graduate. But if you're enamored with being average and you get married and have a child, well, send your kids to, public school system, average public school system. And average children don't go to college. So the average salary of a non-college grad is $30,000 a year for the rest of your life.
So what is?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so because one of the things you talked about before we got on the call is the power of the mindset, but I want to talk about the steps of getting out of being average, because I'm over here like, just take the conversation, because you are speaking and, people who are listening is like, he stepped on my toes. I'm tired of being average. How do I get out of this?
Well, you make a decision. Look, at the counter of success, there are no bargains. You must pay the price in advance and in full. And if you got to haggle about the price, that tells me you didn't want it to begin with. But here's the good news. The universe is always on the side of the dreamers. It's always on the side of the dreamers. Look, Monique, that's probably the reason why you were born. I don't know anything about you. To me, you sound like you're a millennial. You might be Generation Z, Generation X, or whatever. I don't know. But Monique, here I am. I'm 71 years old. Girlfriend, I'll be 72 in December. And I tell my students, I got the oldest voice in the classroom. The first day of class, which was 3 weeks ago, before I even distributed my syllabus, I told my students, I'm not for everybody. You got 45 other professors here in the School of Business. Do yourself a favor and take somebody else's class. I am not for everybody. I don't have time. I'm here to deliver what I am due to deliver. I was born in 1950. Why was I born in 1950? And the students that I stand before weren't born until 2002, 2003. Well, the universe wasn't ready for them. The universe was ready for me in 1950. That's why I was born in 1950. My father was born in 1914. So, I mean, come on, man. The universe was ready for him, but wasn't ready for me. To the day that my father died, he would tell me, he said, son, I miss my ship, but you'll catch yours. But you'll catch yours. Wow. So I told my students, well, now that you're born, that means all the stops have been removed, all the lights are green, the path has been clear. Now set upon completing your noble task. Do what you've been sent here to do. And what have you been sent here to do? Well, what is your life's purpose? And now we are in a creator's economy, Monique. We have gone from agricultural to industrial, from informational, technological, digital, on and on and on and on and on. Now we're in the creator's economy. And what does that mean? You create your own economy. You got a smartphone and you got a point of view. You got your own business. That's how you're in business right now. I don't care if you're on Ringer. I don't care if you're on Google Meets. I don't care if you're on Microsoft Teams. You got a smartphone. I don't care if it's Android or an Apple phone, but you got a point of view, and that's how you connected with me. So that's the creator's economy. But you've got to ask 4 questions if you are going to evolve and impact the bottom line and influence, impact others in the creator economy. Number 1, why are you here? Why are you here? Well, the reason why you're here is to add value. I just recently had a post, and I was sort of pissed off when I gave it. I hope folks who looked at it didn't mind it, but it was on quiet quitting. I mean, this phenomenon.
Oh, I saw that.
What the hell is quiet quitting? Are you out of your damn mind?
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could care less what your job description says. I could care less what's on your business card. You may be in marketing, you may be in management, you may be in supply chain, you may be in sales, you may be in financial services. That's not why you're here. You're here to add value every step along the way. Now, my mindset, at one time I was in quiet quitting. That's not a new phenomenon. I shared the story that I was passed over for a job. I was the first Black male in the rotational program for Texas Instruments in 1973. And back then, there was no cultural diversity. There was no DEI. There was none of that. There was no inclusion or whatever. There was no affirmative action. There was nothing. But I was the first Black male. And then I left them and I took a job in Philadelphia. I went from Dallas, Texas to Philadelphia for a pharmaceutical company. And again, I was the first Black male in the rotational program for SmithKline French Pharmaceuticals. Well, I was there, quote unquote, they were training me to be a district sales manager, and I had a number of openings, and I just knew, Miss Monique, that I was going to get one. I didn't get doo-doo. And my ego, now I was young and I was stupid and I was ignorant, I was cocky, and my ego says, how dare they, blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. And I told my wife, that's it, enough. I've done my corporate time. I'll show up, I'll punch the clock, but this far, no further. And then I was working on my first book. See, my first book was going to be What Makes the Great Great. And I was in year 2 of What Makes the Great Great. I was collecting all this data, interviewing folks left and right, until the Napoleon Hill Foundation, W. Clement Stone, called me based upon an article that I wrote for Success Magazine. He didn't hear me. He didn't know about me until he read that article in Success Magazine. And, then he called me up and wanted me to finish Napoleon Hill's last book. And I gave him some pushback because I was working on my book. And he said, young man, if you got any sense, you'll push your book aside and finish this. And I did. And in the course of the interviews that I had, I saw the errors of my way. Under no circumstances do you leave your brand. What's the opposite of a brand? Your brand, how you do anything, Monique, is how you'll do anything. How you do anything is how you will do everything.
Right.
You keep your brand strong, and your brand is based upon your personal beliefs, and your personal beliefs is based upon your values. Based upon, we're talking the standards that you have set in life. I asked the females in my class that some of you may like, may one day be like me, where you want to walk down that aisle and you want to look in the eyes of your soulmate and say those magical words, to have and to hold. And I call them all daughters. I tell them I could care less what's on your birth certificate. If you're in my class, your last name is Kimbro. Until that day comes, are you going to raise your standards, or are you going to lower your standards? And they say, Dr. Kim, I'm raising my standards. And as they say, as a matter of fact, I'm raising my standards right now to looking at some black male in my class. So it's all based upon your values. You never compromise your values. And you're going to do it for some half-assed quiet quitting? It's not about a job. And I said in that podcast, I know your job is not your life. But you better hope and pray your job is your life. Not only is your life, is your life's calling, because this is what you've been sent here to do. You can see as soon as I walk in that classroom, this is what I was called to do. This is what I was called to do. I got 3 cohorts and all of them knocking on 100 kids. This is what I was called to do. And when I step in that class, damn it, everybody's in there, in their seat, assuming the learning position. Because they know me. Because I'm going to call them out, man. If I see somebody daydreaming, I say blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing wrong with daydreaming. God, and I like it when they're daydreaming. But I see nothing wrong with daydreaming. But let's daydream about the case, my brother. So, I mean, that's the way I am, because this is what Henry David Thoreau say. Don't die with your music left in you. Don't die with your music left in you. What did Too Short say? It's been way too long. Time for the whole world to play your song. Well, when I walk in that classroom, damn it, you're going to play my song.
Right.
For the next 60 minutes, you're going to use your outdoor voice indoor. You're going to sing loud when I'm in that classroom. So that's why are you here? Number 2, what can you do? What do I mean by that, Monique? Do you know your area of excellence? Do you? Everybody's got a gift, but a gift doesn't become a talent till you use it, till you work on it. So you look at all the people who are iconic in every area. You might say, Bill Gates is iconic. Steve Jobs is iconic. Oprah Winfrey. Oh, my goodness. Jay-Z and Beyonce. Derek Jeter. They're iconic. Well, what the hell do I mean by iconic? Well, anybody can win one time. I mean, Beyonce, you can be number 1 on the Billboard charts. You can be number 1. You can have the number 1 song in the world. Anybody, a blind squirrel can find a nut one time. But Michael Jordan, when you win a second national title, Jeter, when you win the World Series again, that's what we call dominating. Dominating. And when you dominate, you're iconic. That's your area of excellence. And if you want to find your area of excellence, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what do you love to do? What do you have a passion for? What can you throw your whole heart and soul into? You can see what I have a passion for. Question number 2, what would you do for free? All right, so everybody knows I teach at an HBCU. I damn near do it for free. Why? Because I'm only 4 miles away from Georgia Tech. If I took my talents and I took my big bad Northwestern degree 4 miles over to Georgia Tech, I would more than double my salary. But it's not about that. It's not about that. It's doing what I've been sent here to do, my area of excellence. And maybe one day I might take up on that. How do you know? How can you tell how well you are doing your job? Easy, Monique. By answering the question, how many people have tried to hire you away from your current employer? If your phone isn't ringing, if you're not receiving emails, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
No one wants you. And look, no one wants you, Monique, when no one wants you. They only want people who are game changers, who have found their area of excellence. That's why Steve Jobs says, I only hire A-list people. He said, if you're not A-list, there's no need for you and I to talk. So one day, one of the HRs from his talent department goes to him and says, Steve, how come you only hire A-list people, man? Come on. I know some sharp folks that you might call B-list, man, who could really impact our bottom line and move us closer to our goals and objectives. How come you only hire A-list, Steve? And he said, the reason why I only hire A-list, because if I hired that B-list person, one day the B-list people will feel sorry for the C-list and just might hire a C-list. And after that, the whole organization might go down the tubes.
Wow. That is deep.
That's not me. That's Steve Jobs.
Right. I love it.
That's Steve Jobs. And what did Steve Jobs say? Don't build a business. Build a movement. Build a movement. Number 2, he said, make it easy for people to do business with you. Make it easy for your customers to do business with you. As we know, there are 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. You want to scale a business, you got to monetize all 21. Mm-hmm. Now I'm standing before millennials, and millennials always run. I got a business. Okay, how are you going to, which form are you going to reach your product and service? Oh, Dr. Kim, I'm going right to internet. Well, what about the other 20? What about those individuals who don't have broadband internet service? I mean, how are you going to reach them? I mean, even Amazon, you'll be able to buy Amazon products without going online. Mm-hmm. And when, Jeff Bezos came up with Amazon, hey, you can go in bookstores and get the books. So just think about that. So number 1, man, your area of excellence. So number 1, what do you love to do? Number 3, what would you do for free? And number 4, when you can't answer those questions, Monique, go to somebody who you respect and admire and ask the question, what do you see me as? What do you think I would be good at doing? Here I am, a sophomore, undergrad, University of Oklahoma, and my fraternity brothers as a sophomore, 18, 19 years old. Back then, they even called me the professor. And I asked them, why you guys call me the professor? Kimbro, everybody knows you're in the library. You always got a book under your arm.
Love it.
Come to campus and speak, and you're always in the front row.
Love it.
Yeah, it was just about inquisition. Had to know. Even my mother and my grandmother would say the same thing. Boy, you ask too many questions. I mean, we're trying to, come on, man. What are you doing? You're trying. Why do we go through life? And what is the number 1 goal of going through life, Miss Monique? The number 1 goal is to narrow your zone of ignorance. Will you please narrow your zone of ignorance? So Socrates, his number 1 student was Plato. And Plato's number 1 student was Aristotle. And what did Plato do? They said Plato created the academy, but he didn't. Because all you got to do is get a globe, get a world map, and see how close Greece was to Africa. And the first university ever built was Timbuktu. So you can walk from Greece to Africa. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give Plato the credit. When did Plato? They said he created the academy. And Monique, what the hell is the academy? Kindergarten to PhD. That is the academy. And I don't care if you get your doctorate at NYU or get your doctorate at University of Hawaii. As soon as they shake your hand, the first thing they're going to do, your committee chair is going to look into your eyes and say the following words. Congratulations. Welcome to the academy. Now, with the doctorate, I'm a member of the academy, and the number 1 goal of the academy is increase the body of knowledge. All right, tell us something that we don't know. Well, here you go. Here you got Think and Grow Rich with Black Joy. You got What Makes the Great Great. You got the Wealth Joy. You didn't know that, but now you know. Now you know that when the Wealth Choice is written in 2013, there were only 35,000 Black millionaires. Well, Dr. Kimbro, tell us about these Black millionaires. Well, these are the 7 laws that they ascribe to. So there you are. So the third question on the Creators Academy. Okay, so number 1, why are you here? What can you do? Number 3, Monique, where are you going? Mm-hmm. You got the keys to the car, girl. Where the hell are you going?
Right.
I can tell you exactly where you're going. You're going to make a difference. You're going to make a difference. It's the only reason why you're here. It's only 4 things you want to do in order to make a difference. Number 1, you want to make a difference. Number 2, you want to make a difference with somebody else who wants to make a difference. Number 3, you want to make a difference with somebody else who makes a difference doing something that makes a difference. But number 4, Monique, you want to make a difference with somebody else who wants to make a difference doing something that makes a difference at a time when it makes all the difference in the world. And Miss Monique, damn it, girl, this is the time. Have you seen the latest data? Black America, 42 million African Americans in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And only 4% of black males attend college. Did you hear what I said?
I heard what you said.
4%. Black males, you are 6% of the population. You comprise 40% of the prison population. So we're 4% of, 4% of African American males go to college compared to damn near 40% of whites. How are you going to close that gap? Now, I did not say complete college. All I said when it comes to college, only 4% stick their toe into the water. That's it. How are you going to close that gap, girl? Didn't I tell you the average salary is what, $47,000? How are you going to close that gap? If they didn't go to college, didn't I tell you it's $30,000?
Mm-hmm.
The hell is $30,000? $400 a week? You do the calculus, girl.
Mm-hmm.
So there you are. Why are you here? What can you do? Where are you going? And the last question, what took you so long? What took you so long? Come on, man. I tell my students right now, and I run the gamut. I got 13 students and I teach a doctoral cohort. These are doctoral candidates who are walking distance from those magical 3 letters at the end of the name. And I got a few cohorts of freshmen. And I asked the question, what took you so long? All right, no one in this class is 16. I got 3 granddaughters. Mm-hmm. And, they're younger than my freshmen. And I say to some of the young ladies, come on, man, can we change some of the attire? No one in this class is 16. Why are you dressed like my 16-year-old granddaughter? Come on, man, you business student.
Right.
They think you know something about money. Either earn it, save it, invest it. Either dole it out, distribute it. And perception is reality. Change the attire, girl. Perception is the reality. How they see you is how they perceive you. And how they perceive you, well, that's how they're going to deal with you. And here you are dressed like that. And that's going to be a problem. Why? Because nobody wants anybody to mess with their money. No one. Right. So why are you seeing the holes in the clothes? Why the halter top on? Why the spaghetti strings, girl? What's this about?
But some of this stuff sells now. People are making big business out of this. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you have these businesses that do sell these things and they're
without a doubt. But I'm talking your personal brand.
Right. Okay.
I'm talking your personal brand. Look, Monique. Oh, girl, don't get it twisted. If I put $1 million in your hand right now, Miss Monique, and I'm so glad you brought that issue up. I put $1 million in your hand right now. You couldn't keep it unless you had $1 million worth of esteem, $1 million worth of personal and professional development. You wouldn't keep it. Mm-hmm. Right now, if you took all the black athletes in baseball and football and basketball, 78%, if they didn't declare bankruptcy, they at least, considered it. Why? Mm-hmm. And didn't you sign a contract for $100 million? Yeah, but you didn't have $100 million worth of esteem. They didn't have $100 million worth of professional development. So they couldn't keep it. It's not what you have in your hand. It's what are you becoming? And that's when you keep it. Look at all the folks who were quote unquote millionaires through the lottery and then dead broke. And then dead broke. There's a 1-to-1 correlation. It's called E to E ratio. It's economics 101. What is the E to E ratio? How much money you spend on entertainment versus how much money you spend in education. And we're talking about average individual. It's about, what? 50 to 1 for every $50 you spend in entertainment. You spend $1 buying a book, going to a seminar, listen to a podcast, whatever. That's average. What is it in the black community? It's about 200 to 1. 200 to 1. In other words, you got folks who would never read a book. But you let Jay-Z, a rapper, Beyonce come to town, they're going to get the highest ticket. You let Bruno Mars come to town, they're going to buy the front row seat for $200. Well, that adds up. That adds up. And then they're going to spend money, to get a new outfit, buy money that they don't have, trying to impress somebody who they can't stand. That's the excuse me, I'm not blaming anybody. That's called a paradigm that you can change. Remember I said, good news and bad news. If you don't change, nothing will change. The good news, if you change, Monique, everything changes. Everything changes. What did Damon John say? He said, man, he called me the professor when I interviewed him. He said, man, professor, it's not how far you can see. It's how clearly you can see. Whoa.
That's good.
Whoa. Go ahead, Damon. Thanks for that. I'll definitely use that.
I love it. I love it. And so this brings me to this conversation on wealth and success. So, because I know in your book, Think and Grow Rich, you talk about being rich is not, and kind of how you said before, it's, you do what you do because it's your purpose and not for the money, in a sense.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be wealthy, and what does it mean to be rich?
Well, there are 10 different forms of wealth. If you just want to talk about number 3, and number 3 is money. So we can talk about money, what it means to be, and I can give you the data. Right now, and I have to look back to see how many. Right now, you got close to 20 million millionaires in the United States. But when you look at black millionaires, okay, the average black millionaire has a net worth of $4 million. Okay, more than 70% of the black millionaires have made their money through entrepreneurship or real estate. Okay, 1 out of 5 MBAs. When you look at black women, the average GPA for black female millionaires is 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. For black males is 2.9. So I can give you the data if that's what you're talking about, what it means, for millionaires. Okay, in terms of their investment behavior, only 1 out of 5 black households own stock. Only 1 out of 5 own stock. So, you're looking at you got 40% of African Americans that don't even use a reputable financial institution for the banking. The number 1 bank of black America is Walmart. Number 2, it's the post office. Now, you can do whatever you want to do, but until you develop credit and you got a child who wants to go to college, you can't even get a student loan. So more than 40% of African Americans are unbanked. But here's the information. If you really wanted to make a difference, take those individuals who are struggling. Monique, every day that you wake up, half of your race is only a day's march, from poverty. Half of your race. So if you really wanted to make a difference, go get the wealth choice. Go get Think and Grow Rich, a black choice, and place it in their hands, because all I have done is self-actualization. Now, Maxwell Maltz came up with the theory about self-actualization, and what it is, the short, definition of it, only study the best and the brightest. Only emulate the best and the brightest, because that's human nature. Human nature is one-on-one. The great journey of human nature is food, shelter, and clothing. Then, Monique, you get to a point where you want better food, shelter, and clothing. But sooner or later, you get to the point that you become a completely self-actualized individual when you want food, shelter, and clothing for your fellow man, fellow woman. And that's what the wealthiest want. They don't want to leave anybody behind. So let's make sure that we can place the keys to the kingdom in their hand. There's not an elementary school, junior high school, or high school, particularly in the black community, who shouldn't be studying and reading my books, because I studied your best and brightest. You name it, I've sat in their feet, and not counting sat at the feet, but just think of all the folks who came into my class to speak. Steve Harvey spoke in my class. I mean, I could go on. Tyrese Gibson spoke in my class. Ayanna Van Zant spoke in my class. Janetta Patton spoke in my class. Who's Janetta Patton? Usher's mother. So, I mean, the best and bright. John Carlos, 1968 Summer Olympic Games, who held up his fist, the Black Power salute, as he stood on the podium hearing the national anthem in the hope with the gold medal around his neck. He spoke in my class. I can go on. I'm missing 50 million different folks. Dikembe Mutombo spoke in my class. Oh, I mean, on and on and on, trying to expose my students to the best and the brightest. And what I'm doing, I told you at the opening of this session, Miss Monique, I'm a Johnny-come-lately. So you go back to antiquity. And what did the great pharaohs, what did the great Cleopatras do? They had little, ceramic, stone carved images of their likeness. A headshot with a headband on it. And they had these little statuettes and carved images, and they placed them in the homes of all the small children in ancient Egypt. Now, why did they do that? Because this is what they wanted them to emulate. They wanted them to see at an early age what you are capable of doing. This is greatness, and you are capable of greatness. Right. My God, have we lost it? Have we lost it? Who we emulate and who we look up to. Oh my God. We have, in some circumstances, lowered the bar so low that we trip over it. And I'll never lower the bar. I told my students today, I'm not going to lower the bar for you, because if I lower the bar, I'll make a victim out of you. You're not going to be a victim. You're not going to be a victim. What you will do is live victoriously.
I love that.
You can make money or you can make excuses. But Monique, look, damn it, you can't do both. You can't do both. The poor are poor because they act rich, and the rich are rich because they act poor. You know how many times over the course of 7 years in my research, I sat in raggedy ass cars to interview some of my millionaires? Beat up cars, man. Beat up SUVs and this, that, and everything. I mean, here I am in my study, and I'm looking out my driveway. And what are you looking at? Oh, I got cars, man. Look at the car that I drive, a 2006 Lexus SUV. 2006. Monique, I got 260,000 miles on that car. 200. And my daughter said, come on, Dad, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Come on, do we have to put a collection together? We got to take up a collection for you, Dad. Yeah, I'm going to get one. Come on, girl. Why you? I get to throw Dad under the bus thing. No, Dad, come on, man. Let's be real. Okay. No problem. I will. But I'm saying, man, come on, man. What is the game plan in life? Where are we going? Well, the reason why you're here is to leave a legacy. And that's not me. That's Harvard B School. That's the Stern School of Business at NYU. Go get an MBA from the Stern School of NYU, and they tell you the first assignment they will give you is, to write your own eulogy. Write your own eulogy. First assignment. When it's all said and done, what will somebody say about you? Go get an MBA at Harvard. And the first assignment, they tell you, the first assignment, is to, leave your legacy. Write your own legacy. Again, when I read your book of life, and I get to the last chapter, and I get to the last page, and I get to the last paragraph, and I get to the last sentence, and I get to the last two words. What are the last two words? Hopefully the last two words are, I win. I win. That is the purpose of life. And that's not me. That's Nelson Mandela. There's Nelson Mandela about to make his transition, fighting for every breath, laying on his couch in his home in Jadeburg. And he's surrounded by his lieutenants. And there's a journalist begging him for one last interview. And his lieutenants and bodyguard are waving the journalist off, and Nelson Mandela fighting for every breath said, no, let him in, let him in, let him in. And he said, Mr. Mandela, man, just one last question. He says, sure, what is it? And the journalist asked, he says, Mr. Mandela, what is the purpose of life? And there's Nelson Mandela, man. He says, the only way I can answer that question is to ask you 2 questions. He says, sure, Mr. Mandela, anything. He says, have you closed the gap between your potential and your performance? And I'm going to ask you, Monique, have you closed the gap between your potential and your performance? And then number 2, have you moved from fear to fearless? Have you shifted from fear to fearless? If you knew who walks beside you every day on this journey called life, you would never doubt or fear again. You would never doubt or fear again. The body's temporary, but the soul is permanent. We speak to God through prayer, and your Creator speaks to us through intuition. And you know what to do when you got it on your mind and got it on your heart. Now, you can call it a dream. You can call it epiphany. You can call it Pollyanna, Cinderella. You can call it, if you're Malcolm Gladwell, counterintuitive, whatever. But you know when the Creator is speaking to you. Why? Because you got something in your being that you have got to do. You got to do. And you know when you got to do it. And other folks won't understand that. I mean, I said to my students the first day of class, I said, you go back, you're from Detroit, you're from Chicago, you're from LA, you're from Baltimore, you're from Philadelphia, you're from New York. Some of you right here are from Atlanta, you're from Houston, you're from Dallas, whatever. I said, you can go back to your high school and you look at all your friends who told you at graduation that they were going to go to college. They told you that. Oh, yeah, girl, I'm going to HBC. I'm going to PW. They told you. But when it came time to pack up your belongings, get on that plane, get on that bus, get on the train, get in the back seat of your daddy's car and drive away to campus, only a handful could do it. So what is the difference between you and all your friends that you left behind? They were looking around, come on, man, how did that? I said, no. I said, you're just like Moses when he was climbing Mount Sinai and he saw that burning bush. And he saw that bush that was on fire, but there was no smoke, no charcoal. The bush was not being consumed. It was just on fire. And what did Moses say? Man, damn, that's something you don't see every day. The bush is on fire. I don't see any smoke. I don't see any residue. I don't see any charcoal, but it's on fire. That goes against everything that I've been taught, everything that I know. That's something I didn't even know about. There must be something more to life. And I said, that's why you're here. And all your little friends are back in the hometown because you saw the burning bush and they didn't. You knew there was something more else to life. I'm leaving home and I got to find out what it is. That's entrepreneurship 101. There's something more to life.
That is so powerful.
Yeah. I can't give it. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You can't borrow it. But it's on your heart. Out of the heart flow the issues of life. This brick wall, this mountain, I'm going through. Sorry, but I got to find out what's on the other side. Can't teach it. Can entrepreneurship be taught? Hell no. Now, I can give you the skills. I can be an entrepreneurship professor and the like, but only you know how much you can take. How much can you take? And what do we know about entrepreneurship? And what do we know about success? And what do we know about achievement? It is a statistical event. That's all it is. That's all it is. I tell my students, why am I Dr. Kimbro? Am I Dr. Kimbro because I'm smarter than you? Hell no. I'm Dr. Kimbro because I got more college hours than you have. You get the same number of college hours I have, you'll be Dr. Whoever. And that's success. It is a statistical event. For me, it took 7 years. For somebody else, hey, it might take 18 months. I don't know, whatever it is, but whatever it is, you're prepared to do it. You're prepared to do it. Took Napoleon Hill 20 years to finish The Law of Success. That was a book that Andrew Carnegie wanted to write. It took him 20 years. You know how many folks would have quit in year 2? But it was completely and totally up to me. I was prepared to put up with the bullshit. And I did put up with it. 7 years of that nonsense, Miss Monique. I put up with it. I lost 2 cars. Almost lost my house 5 different times. You don't know how many times I had my water, electricity, gas cut off. But I was prepared to do that. Thank God that the choice was mine, not somebody else's. Right. That's a powerful metaphor for what are you prepared to do? And see, that's strategy 101. And what is strategy? When you look at Howard Schultz, who started Starbucks, when you look at Bob Johnson, BET, when you look at Tyler Perry, hell, I interviewed that man. I asked him, I said, Tyler, how in the world did you go from sleeping in your car in New Orleans and sleeping in your car in Atlanta, Georgia, building a $240 million production studio? And what did he tell me? Nothing but the grace of God. Mm-hmm. When I look at T.D. Jakes, when I looked at, and I told you, when you look at Steve Jobs and Steve Harvey, they all had to answer that question, which is on strategy. And what is it? What's, when you get up, when you find a dream, an idea, you ask yourself the question, what's the best that can happen? Number 2, what's the worst that can happen? Number 3, what's likely to happen? And number 4, Monique, this is the entrepreneurship question. This is the disruptors question. This is the game changers question that I had to answer, that they all had to answer. Are you willing to tolerate the worst in order to achieve the best? And I said yes. And people ask me that question all the time. What is the difference between the individual who got the dream and then, got his hands spanked, got his teeth knocked out, and went back into corporate America, between the guy who got the dream and said, I'm about to lose the house, take the car, take the house. I can't go back into corporate America. What is the difference, Monique? Well, one guy was afraid of losing his car and his house. The other guy was like me. He was afraid of losing his life.
Woo!
If I went back to corporate, I was going to lose my life.
Right. That is deep. That is so powerful. Wow. This was the whole, everything we needed. This was the episode of the year. Dr. Kimbro, this was everything. Mm-hmm. And I just thank you for pouring into my audience and just pouring into me too. I was looking here at the book, The Wealth Choice, and usually I write when I got a book. And I started Black to Business in the end of 2013, going into 2014. And I got your book in September of 2014, and I read it then. And it really just transformed how I think. And I think I had Think and Grow Rich even before that. So, yeah, it's just, and when I think of, when you say like those stories and things that you want to emulate, and also speaking about the business books that were out there. When I first started, I think the first thing I read was your books, and then also Dr. Claude Anderson's work as well. Mm-hmm. So that was what I had.
Okay. But wow. Well, you're on the right track. So you just continue and tell all your listeners, dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. Dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. When they come into your house, your condo, whatever, and they look at your personal library and they say, this is the library of a serious student. Mm-hmm. Of a serious student. See, I knew that somehow, some way, I was going to get that terminal degree. Mm-hmm. And my sophomore year at undergraduate, I knew I wanted to be a college professor. So I no longer, sold my books back to the bookstore at the end of the year. I kept them. So my oldest granddaughter, she just went into her sophomore year at Savannah State, and she was writing a term paper. And she said to me, Granddaddy, you ever heard of Kate Turabian? And she called me up from Savannah State. And I said, not only have I heard, let's go to FaceTime. So she called me back and FaceTimed it. And I showed her on my bookshelf the Kate Turabian I had when I was her age in college.
Wow.
Yep.
So beautiful.
Yes, indeed. I said, baby girl, have I heard it? Here, you want to use mine? As a matter of fact, I had 2 copies of it. 2 copies of Kate Turabian. I got my Elements of Style. I said, what else you need right here? You can go ahead and do it. Because when the pandemic hit, and for those 18 months or close to 2 years that everybody was remote and virtual, all my grandchildren were in my study. You would think they were in the public library. Why? They had high-speed internet. 2 computers, widescreen, and what did we have? They had 2 desktops, 2 or 3 notebook computers, 2 Apples. They had color printers, 3 printers, 2 of them were color. So they had it Oh man, they would come over here, and my wife, their grandmother, would cook their breakfast and cook their lunch and got them ready and everything. So, and then after school, they went upstairs because they brought the luggage over and they showered and changed. And one lived up in Jersey City. She flew down here to go to school down here, but she was remote. So that's called making a difference. That's called passing the baton. When it comes to education, we're in the exchange zone. All right. And what do you know about a relay race? All right. You got a baton. You pass that baton outside of the exchange zone, you're disqualified. All right. When you look at Black America and you look at all the indicators that would lead to financial success, if we as a race are not in last place, we're in next to last place. But thank God for individuals like you. Thank God, like you said, all the material that we have right now. Okay, the books that I've written and all the information out there. Well, it's exchange zone. Now is the time to make the exchange. Now is the time to make sure they have access to this information. Pre-pandemic, almost 47% of African Americans, were homeowners. Now that number's down to 42%. Got to make a change. Now, why is that critically important? Because the equity in your home is the first chance for you to go ahead and take advantage of an opportunity in a business. See, that's opportunity. And what does opportunity love? Opportunity loves speed. If you got the cash on hand and you unite it with an opportunity, hey, man, that's speed. That's what we need. You save 10 to 15% of everything that you earn. So you got the money, you got the equity in the house, and bang, here comes an opportunity for you to cash in on. That's what we got to do. Miss Monique, I love you madly. And unfortunately, we only got to one or two questions on here. You got
You cover everything within everything. It was all in there, and I loved every bit of it. I love this conversation, and I'm pretty sure someone who is listening is going to want to know how they can connect with you, find you, and support you.
Oh, I am out there. Yeah, I am knee deep in social media. If you can't reach me, just reach any of my students, and they will give you the 411 on me, man. They will tell you everything. But I'm on, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I am everywhere. I would love to hear. Let me know, let me hear their take about this podcast. And, if you're looking for somebody else to add into it, please do not delay calling me up.
I definitely will. Thank you so much, Dr. Kimbro. And I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing and have done for us.
Oh, thank you very much, Ms. Monique. I'm proud of you. Hang in there and God bless.
I enjoyed every moment, every bit of this conversation for so many reasons. And I often in these interviews speaking about the takeaways that I have from my conversations with the guests. But this one was also special because I had so many takeaways. Dr. Kimbro gained so many gems, but most importantly, one of the things I got from this conversation is that I felt like a youngin' getting game from an OG. Like truly, this was a passing the baton conversation. And it was such an honor for me because, as I mentioned before, I read Dr. Kimbro's books in the beginning of my journey and at a younger age. And for me, it's all about recognizing and speaking with those who have laid the groundwork for us to be able to do what we do today. And those who walked so that we can run, and those that continue to pave the way like Dr. Kimbro has. That's why I was so honored to have this conversation with him, and it was truly a pleasure. So today it was so many takeaways, and of course additional takeaways was the fact that he spoke about how not to be average, and you have to narrow your zone of ignorance. And he also mentioned that we are now in a creator's economy, and we must leverage this to build wealth for our community. So I hope that you took away something from this conversation. Again, I know I did. And you can check out those resources and books mentioned by going to blacktobusiness.com/112. Thank you so much for supporting us as we support you. And I look forward to seeing you back here again next week, same time, same place.